Hey everybody, W here with another Stratego game analysis. This is game number 6 of our major attack series, learning to play from behind. Sometimes when you attack with your majors, you don't even get behind. And we'll see that in this short game. And we'll see a few minor mistakes I make. I get a little sloppy, so we'll go over those problems. I really do like this major attack strategy. I do it to an extreme level here, but that's because I'm playing beginner, so I'm trying to get way behind. And so sometimes you get a lot of information and a lot of pieces, sometimes you don't get much. So let's see what happens in this game. I'm playing a silver miner. I believe he had 130 games, experience, 70 wins, and 60 losses. So let's see how the game goes. My opponent goes first. Now, right away, I'm wondering if this is a weak side, and maybe this side could be bombed off. Oh, for those just watching, the major attack strategy is I'm allowed to use a scout and a major to attack in each lane. And once I find my opponent's marshal, I can play a normal game. But if I don't find the marshal, I have to keep on attacking with all three majors until they are captured. So that's how that works. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. All right, so we have a sergeant over here and a bomb over here, so it's not a symmetrical setup on the front row. Okay. So now we have a general here. Wow, that's kind of unusual, unless the opponent is a martial blitzer. Usually martial blitzers have a general right up front. Sometimes they have it like behind the leg or maybe in one of these two positions. So I'm wondering why he's not blitzing. So that's kind of interesting, having a general in the front. Maybe we should prepare for a martial blitzer on this side. Now I can attack with other pieces, but I can only play defense. I can't, like, if I can take this lieutenant with my captain, but then I can't run up with my captain. He has to stay back on these 40 squares. So we'll take the lieutenant. So here comes the general. Now, one of my best abilities in Stratego, probably my best, is my ability to bluff. That's my real talent, and you probably haven't seen it in a lot of my games because it's very hard to bluff bronze, silver, and low gold players. Usually they call your bluffs, so it's usually not too wise to bluff too much because you'll start losing lower pieces. And when you bluff, ideally you want to bluff with lower pieces like a sergeant or a scout, or maybe a miner. If you have all 5 of your miners, maybe use a miner to bluff. I kind of like miners to bluff during the mid game because you chase them back to their side, and then you can drift off and maybe attack 4 from the left or 4 from the right to look for a bomb. Maybe open up a tripod. So, but you always try to use lower pieces to bluff. So if they call it, you don't go down too far on the score count. But sometimes you have to use a high piece because you don't have if the low piece you're bluffing with comes from maybe the second row or the back row, they might think it's a low piece, and then they really will call your bluff. So sometimes you might have to use a higher piece and try to scare your opponent away. So in this case, I decided to bluff with my major just for the hell of it, because I had to attack with him anyway. And let's see what happens. Normally, I would probably bluff with my minor if this was a normal game. I would bluff this piece with my minor. And I think bluffing with the minor might be a better bluff because the marshal is more likely to be behind the lakes, I think, than to be in these lanes. So it looks like my opponent is a little bit scared. So I'm going to keep on chasing. Why not? Right? See what happens. So then I think he finally believes that that's my marshal. And we get ourselves a general. So that's nice. Now, one of the options I could have done, if this, let's say this was a normal game, here, let's see, we go here, here, here. Now, when my opponent goes down here, it's my turn. What's another move I could make? Pause the video for a minute. And what would be another good move if I was playing a normal game? What would be a wonderful move right now on my opponent? Pause the video for a minute and see if you can figure it out. All right, since we know the general was in this spot, it might be worthwhile hitting this piece here to see if it's a spy with your scout. Now, normally the spy would probably be behind the lake, but sometimes the spy is here. And in fact, this is actually the spy. So, and usually I notice that right away. I always try to find the spy if I can. But in this game, I did not think about that, and we'll see why in a second here. So I get the general. Now, usually when a person loses a really high piece, then, especially on the low level, they're going to show the next piece they move is their next high piece. That's usually a common Stratego pattern. So try not to do that because it's an easy read for your experienced opponent. So don't do that. So now we have to be concerned with a marshal lotto because, let's face it, losing your general early in the game, that really sucks. That is really depressing. I know a lot of beginners would quit. I know I always hated if I lost my general early in the game, and my opponent, he only got a captain for it, so that was a real big loss. But we are learning how to play from behind. But usually beginners, when they lose something like a general, they're going to come running right in and start lottoing. So we have to prepare for that. So, but anyway, I have to play still with my three major attack strategy here. So I have to move forward to try to find the marshal. So, but the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to let yourself down when you capture an opponent's, let's say you get their high piece, their marshal or their general. You don't want to relax. You want to really put the hammer to them. You want to finish them off. Don't let them get back in the game, because if they get by your defense and they lotto and get lucky, the game can turn around very quickly. Even if you're up a high piece, they can come in and lotto, get lucky lottoing, and wipe out a lot of pieces. So you have to be prepared for a lotto, especially when you're playing silver and low-level golds. So I have to attack now. And sure enough, he comes with his high piece. And so he wasn't a marshal blitzer, but we find the marshal. So now, ideally, when you're up a really big high piece, it's probably a good idea to swap. because then he can't lotto, and it helps gives you a better chance of winning the more high pieces you take off the board. So at least I want to block this lane. And then you have to start thinking about your vulnerable pieces. Like my major here is vulnerable because once the marshals, if they get traded off, then you have to worry about the colonels coming in. So you want to make sure you don't get way behind in lower pieces. So it's interesting, he's moving over here and he's not moving over here. So that's always good. Anytime you're in the lead and you swap off pieces, you're doing okay. So you have to worry about a colonel attack coming down here and wiping out all these pieces. That would be terrible. So I have to be able to block that. So I'm just using my lieutenant as a scouting piece, but maybe I should have brought it back and then defended it with the colonel instead of just losing it to find out information. Probably would have been better to pull it back, but that's just like a minor blunder. So he came down with a major, which is interesting. He's showing a major, and that probably is not such a good move on his part because this becomes a huge target now, and he's up a major. This really becomes a target, and there's a good chance when you play good players and you show a major like this, you're going to wind up losing it. So I sacrifice my minor. I just want to get the marshal off the board. Now, a lot of times when you're playing someone and they're down a high piece, what they need to do is they need to find my general. And it's a good idea that I don't reveal my general early on most of the time, unless my opponent moved a lot of pieces and I can go in there and maybe capture one or two. Then it might be worthwhile to reveal my general. Or it might be worthwhile, maybe I should come up here and just move my general and park it here. Or park it here and cut off all these pieces. If this side is blocked in, then I cut off half his army. They aren't going anywhere if I just sit here. And that could really restrict his mobility. So you just control the center lane, and then my colonels can come over here and start wiping out pieces. So that's always a possibility. But most of the time, you don't want to reveal your general. You don't want to remove your general right away unless you have a lot of targets. And your opponent is probably going to come down with his lowest pieces to try to find your general cheaply. He doesn't want to come in with a captain, or he really doesn't want to come in with a major. Because he's already losing, so he doesn't want to go down any further. So he's bringing a piece here, and we assume this was a spy, and it is his spy. So don't fall for that trick. That's always a common trick. They'll bring down a spy or a scout to try to find your highest piece so they can avoid it. So he was hoping that was my general, but that was an obvious Stratego pattern move by my opponent in this situation. So he's still hiding his colonels. And now he's doing the right thing. He's looking for targets for his colonels to attack, because he's not doing so bad. He's got me up he's up a major, and he's up a captain. So he's not doing so bad. But he is down to general. We're even on lieutenants and even on sergeants. So I'm trying to pin this major here. Now I could get it real easy if I wanted to. I could bring the general around here and get it, but I don't want to reveal my general yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get this major by bringing a colonel up instead. We know this is the lieutenant. We just scouted. So that's good. We go up a lieutenant now, a lieutenant and a general. We want to get this major. See, that was kind of bad on his part. He knew what this piece was. He didn't know what this piece was. He should have attacked this piece instead of attacking my captain. He knew this was a captain. He didn't know what this piece was. So he should have found out if this was a colonel or not. Because he can't attack this with his high pieces because it might be the general. So anytime when you're trapped, you almost always want to attack let the unknown piece attack you, just in case if they're bluffing, or just so you know what the piece is. So then you'll know what both pieces are. So he's scouting me. So unless we know this is a bomb. So unless this is a colonel, his major is captured. So now we're even back on the majors, which is great. See, he decides to swap. He doesn't have much else to do. I think this side was blocked off, and I think that's probably a bad thing to do most of the time. Sometimes it might help you, but I think most of the time it just limits your ability. And if you get behind, you only have 2 lanes, so your opponent only has to block 2 lanes if they don't open this up. So, if you have to lotto, you'd like to be able to go down 3 lanes instead of just 2. So he wound up trading off colonels. So he had a bomb here, and it looks like this side was bombed off. And it looks like he had a lot of good pieces here, so maybe bringing the general up right away wouldn't have been a bad idea, because it would have he wouldn't have been able to move any of these pieces. He would have really been in trouble. So he's trying to get to my captains. And he still needs to find that general. That's his problem. He doesn't know where my general is. Now I make a little mistake here. What you don't want to do, we know this was a bomb. We don't know what this is. I should have reversed these two. Now this might be a bomb, but you don't know. And he probably thinks I'm bringing up a minor. Or now he scouted it, so he knows this is a minor. So I should have just reversed it to make sure I got the bomb instead of moving it here. So you don't want to make careless mistakes like that when you're playing, especially against, in a real close game. If this piece got taken by a sergeant, that would really be a bummer. So, but he didn't attack me with this piece, so this is probably a bomb as well. So this is probably his last major. We just scout to make sure. He doesn't want to go over here. And we finally get the last major. Now we reveal the general, and now we're up a major and a general and a lieutenant, and this game is over. So try to really step up your game when you capture a person's high piece. Don't have a letdown. Try not to make any kind of mistake so they don't get back into the game. And then if you capture a person's marshal or you capture a person's general and it really shocks them early on, you might want to even play slow for a few moves, because they might decide to quit. And if they quit, then they can't come back and beat you. And it gives them a chance to look at the scoreboard to see where they stand, and then they might think, it's not worth playing another 20 or 30 minutes when I'm probably going to lose anyway. So that's always a good tactic. So anyway, this was game number 6. I hope you learned something. So sometimes you get lucky and you don't even fall behind when you do this major attack. So hope you learned something, and we'll work on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.